I also wish you a good morning. And I would like to thank Divan Gangamata and every one of you for inviting me and receiving me here. I visited Anand in Portland. It's almost embarrassing to say how long ago. It's like in prehistory. Anand is prehistory. I think it must be 30 years because I've been 27 years in Europe. And coming back after all of this time, it is just thrilling, absolutely thrilling, to see what you have, what Master, what God and the Gurus have done through all of you, and what they continue to do through all of you. I'm convinced that Ananda is a parallel universe. And wherever we go in the vast world of Ananda, we find the same thing. In India, they say, the same but different. And that's what Ananda is. It is the same everywhere. It's the vibration of joy. It's the vibration of giving and of service and of expansion. It's the excitement of pioneering a part of God's will for this planet at this time. And we all share that vision. We share Yogananda's vision for this work. What is his vision? That groups of people will live and share together in simplicity and love and in joy, and to share that with other people. So we can say that each one of us is attuned to the vision of Yogananda, and each one of us has a part to play in that vision. And we're trying our best to play our part well. Today's subject is about attunement. There are some aspects of the teachings that are key, they're central. And I think among all of the keys that we have, the master key is attunement. Because when we are in the flow of grace, when we are in the flow of the divine will, as we heard from the Bible reading, to all of those who receive him, who are in tune with him and his will, he gives us the power to become the sons of God. We hear this very often. Yogananda quoted it very often, Swami quotes it very often, we do. Let's look at it carefully this morning. We're going to talk a lot about what it means to receive that energy. But when we do receive it, we have the power to become the sons of God. We don't talk much about power. It's a little frightening. We don't want to become egoically involved. But what is the power that will be ours when we are in tune with God? It is unimaginable what that power is. Yogananda, in one of his writings, said that every soul eventually will evolve to that state where they become a Brahma, a creator, and they will be able to create and populate an entire universe. Think about that. How would you like to decorate your universe? Do you have your color scheme in mind? What kind of people do you want to put there? Do you want to put different kinds of animals and plants? But just think of that power to create and populate an entire universe. The power to become sons of God. You know, God is the creator. God creates everything, that power of creativity. And that's where we're going. And yes, it is awe-inspiring. It is in many ways frightening. How can we, in our present state of consciousness, achieve that state of consciousness, that power? Well, very simply, we can't do it by ourselves. We can't do it with our own willpower. We can't do it with our own intelligence, with our own creativity. We have to receive a much greater power in order to achieve God realization. We're just not going to be able to do it by ourselves. Yogananda gave us a formula, as much as the spiritual path could ever be formulated. I create words in all parallel universes. And that formula is that the spiritual path is made up of 3 components. 25% of the path we must contribute by our own effort. And this takes everything that we have. What is the effort that we need to give? Well, first let's see what the other 2 components are. 25% of our pathway to God realization is contributed by our guru, because through his wisdom and through the discipline that he gives us, he guides our efforts. Before we come to the guru, we can have great energy and make great efforts, but they're not always focused. So the guru helps us to focus our efforts and to gain magnetism so that we really can walk directly and clearly towards the goal. The guru, as he writes in a letter to one of his disciples, he says, "Your troubles, I don't mind. I expect that you will have them. A smooth life is not a victorious life. And I will give you lots of my good karma so that you will get through." Now, this is the grace of the guru. He guides us, he leads us, he shows us the way. He asks us to follow him, and not just to declare, "I am the disciple of a great master." Jesus at the Last Supper said to his disciples, "You call me Lord, Lord, but you don't do what I ask." So this is our part with the guru's part. He is the pole star. He is our navigator. And in a way, we can relax. In a way, knowing that he will guide us. You get in the car, you're going somewhere where you don't know where you're going, and you put on your navigator, your GPS. And you can kind of sit back and relax, and it says, go ahead 0.3 of a mile and turn right. And then lest you forget what the direction is, when you're almost there, and at the next street, turn right. And so we do. We follow the guidance of our navigator. And if by mistake we turn left, what does the navigator say? Recalculating. The guru's not going to say, "You stupid fool. Why didn't you turn right when I told you to turn right?" As Master wrote, "Your troubles, I don't mind." He expects them. And he recalibrates, our pathway and continues to guide us no matter how many deviations we take. Well, that's 2 parts of the formula. It's only 50%. And what about the rest? The rest is God's grace. And what does that really mean in our lives? It means that God is actively calling every one of us to come home. Because he loves us, because he has made us, because we are his creatures, we are expressions of creativity. He loves each one of us as we are, totally and completely. And he is constantly showing us the way. And his love is drawing us. It's the magnet, it's like the sun that is drawing the planets into it. But then there's the gravity, the force of gravity of each planet in the solar system, which is like our ego, which is pulling us away and trying to keep us away from the sun. But if we could only receive the 75% that is the grace of the Guru and the grace of God, we would flow so quickly. All those who receive that grace, when we put ourselves in tune with that power of love, it's there. Sooner or later, we're going to arrive. Sooner or later, we're going to wake up to the fact that God is calling us and has always been calling us. And all we need to do is jump in the river of that grace. That river that is called His love. And then what happens? We see it in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, to those who love me, who get in tune with my love, I grant them discernment through which they will realize me. That is a divine gift, discrimination. That's what we need so much. We can do the grunt work. We can follow the discipline and we do our meditations, and we need to do that. But what attunement gives us is something that we need that attunement to give, and that's discrimination. So that when we make choices, when we have choices to be made, that power of grace is there, telling us what is the right way, because there are choices every day that we make. Yogananda said that we each have free will. That is God's greatest gift to us. But in the last analysis, there is only one decision, one way in which we can use that free will: to come closer to God or to stay far away from Him. And when we are in tune, we have that discrimination. And then when we do, as the Bhagavad Gita continues to say, when we love God, He gives us the discernment, and then He lights a light, a blaze within us, and that light shows us the way. So these are the benefits of being in tune with the divine will. What does attunement look like? How does it feel? I remember in my early years at Ananda, and I came at the very beginning in 1969, we didn't know anything about anything. Swami had the vision, and he wasn't shoving it down our throats. He was holding it on high, and he was talking to us about being in tune with that vision, with that ray of divine grace. But I kept asking him, how does it feel? Well, what I learned over the years is what it feels like not to be in tune. It feels lousy. I mean, you know when you're not in tune. You just feel out of tune. You feel awkward. It's not happening. It's not flowing. And you wish you were in the flow, in the grace, in the movement. But what does that grace, gracefulness, graciousness, what does that look like? Well, when I think of grace, of attunement with grace, there's two images that often come to mind. Each one of us have our little mental, images, our visualizations. And one of them is a big symphony orchestra. And each member, if you've been recently or not so recently to a concert, each musician comes in and his instrument is there, or he brings his instrument, comes in and sits down, and what does he or she do? Start playing? Tunes the instrument. Every instrument has to be tuned before they can play that beautiful music. And to what do they attune? When everybody's there, the concert maestro arrives. He's a very important person to the orchestra. And he comes and sits down. It's usually the first violinist, sometimes the first oboist.
First oboist plays the A that the first violinist directs.
Okay, so it's the A, but there it is, the 440. Plays the note, and everybody tunes their instrument. And only then can the director, the conductor, come in and start. Each one of us is an instrument. And without us, that orchestra is not going to be complete. Without the oboes, it's not going to sound the same. Or the French horns, or the piccolos, or the, what's that? The tuba. Every instrument has a part to play. We need to know what our instrument is. And when we do, we need to attune ourselves, yeah, to the concert maestro. And that's Yogananda for us, those who follow Yogananda or whichever guru you do follow. And the conductor is going to get us in tune by playing our music together in beautiful harmony to get us in tune with a divine song, with a song of the universe, with a song of this cosmos. That's our part. The 25%, we need to discover what our instrument is and not be ashamed of it. Because the world symphony will never be complete without it, without us feeling comfortable with it, without us getting into it and playing it, with courage. But at first, attuning. The other image that comes to mind is something I love to watch and haven't been able to do it for the last many years, and that's in the Olympics, the ice skating, the dancing, the couples dancing. Do any of you love that? Isn't there something, every time I think about it, I just start crying. I don't know why. They're not saints or anything, but it just brings tears to my eyes to see how two people can be so incredibly in harmony with each other and with the music. It takes a long time for them to be in tune. Very often, dancing couples are brother and sister, or they're married couples. And if they change partners, they usually don't win, they don't get the medal because it takes time. But they know they have such an attunement with each other that they feel they're so sensitive to the movement. And the two of them together express that divine music, that divine dance. Well, this Leela, this great play, is a divine dance. It's a divine romance. And if we understand that God is our partner, He is on our side, He's fighting for us. As Yogananda wrote, your troubles, I don't mind. A smooth life is not a victorious life, and I will give you lots of my good karma, so you will get through. God and Guru, 75%, they are there waiting to fight with us, to fight for us, to direct us. And our part is tuning the instrument, dancing with them, letting them guide us. We see this in the great ones. There are examples. I live in Assisi, near Assisi at the Ananda Europa Center. And of course, we feel very close to St. Francis. His master was close to him. And in the early life of St. Francis, not the earliest life, but a little later on, once he was awakening, he had his spiritual awakening, he didn't know what to do. He knew that he was not destined to be a soldier, a cavalier. He wasn't destined to follow in the footsteps of his father, the cloth merchant. He had a spiritual awakening, but he didn't know what to do. And he would go every day to the little ruined chapel of San Damiano, and there was a cross there, a beautiful cross, which is still in Assisi. And he would pray. And he had only one prayer, and he repeated this prayer over and over again. O Signore, cosa vuoi che io faccia? Lord, what do you want me to do? That's all he asked. And he asked it again and again and again. And he was there on his knees for years. People don't realize when they read the story of San Damiano, they thought, well, he went in one day and by noon he had the answer and left. No, he asked again and again and again. And after 2 or 3 years, he finally did hear the voice of God, which said to him, Francis, rebuild my church. And he got up and started collecting bricks, and he rebuilt that church and went on and finally understood that it was the spirit of the church that Jesus wanted him to reconstruct. But St. Francis, in his life, always asked God what he wanted him to do and didn't do what St. Francis thought. And often, in great humility, St. Francis didn't know the next step. And he humbly would ask his friends, his spiritual friends, brothers, he never called them disciples, the little brothers, the frate minore. He would ask them, I don't know what God wants me to do next. Would you please pray? And one of the big questions in his life was, should I spend my life in contemplation or should I go out and preach? And he couldn't figure it out. He couldn't hear God's voice. And he asked St. Clare, would you please pray? He asked Silvestro, would you please pray? He asked Brother Leone, will you please pray? And they all went and prayed, and they opened up the Bible, and it was to the same verse. And I don't remember it exactly, but the verse very clearly gave the message that he was to go out and preach the gospel. And from that moment on, St. Francis left behind him this desire to have a life of contemplation and went out and served, which didn't mean that he didn't have periods of contemplation. He did, and long periods of contemplation, but he knew what God wanted him to do. This is an example for us. One that's a little closer to us in time and space is someone whom we know. That's Swami Kriyananda. I think that all of us, when we look at his life and what he has done in his life and continues to do, by the way, he just wrote a new book, a novel, and it took him 9 days. He wrote the Patanjali Yoga Sutra commentaries in a few weeks? He wrote the Bhagavad Gita commentaries in 3 months. Is this humanly possible? No. But is it possible? Yes. When we do what Kriyananda does, we attune ourselves to the higher consciousness and to the will of God. And when we're in the flow, or as tennis players call it, in the zone, it's there. The power is there. Unimaginable, unbelievable power that takes us to great heights, that makes everything possible, that makes our normal, offerings of our work seem so pallid and paltry when we're in that flow. And there's nothing so exciting, so fulfilling, so awe-inspiring as to be in that flow. And we see what Kriyananda has done in that flow. Whenever there's a concert and we make him get up after the concert, what does he always say? It's not my music. He heard it. This is one aspect of the spiritual path. It's called Shruti. The rishis of old, the original rishis, the 7 original rishis, they heard the wisdom. And they then embodied it and shared it with other people. Swami Kriyananda always hears music. When he sleeps, when he gets up, whatever he's doing, he hears music because he's in the flow of Om, of the cosmic vibration. He's receiving it. And then sometimes he writes it down. We say that he's written over 400 pieces of music. That doesn't begin to tell the number of the pieces of music that he's heard and hasn't written down. In these past couple years, I've had a very small experience of what it's like to receive God's power and to get into the flow and try to realize a vision. And this happened about 2 or 3 years ago now, when Swami Kriyananda took a fancy to writing movie scripts. He'd done books, poetry, novel, photographs, music, and he said, well, what's left? Okay, films. Anyway, he had this inspiration, and he began to write film scripts. And one of them was put into my trust together with someone else, which was to be the story of his life, which was originally called The Disciple. And so I came to Hollywood with this script and tried to attune myself to his vision. Why a movie? Why this story? And the first thing I did was get totally out of tune by taking the script and giving it to some filmmakers and saying, what can we do with this? And they said, we've got to change it, because it's just not a movie. This is not a movie script. And so I said, well, okay, let's follow the outline and see where it leads us. And it kept leading us further and further and further until finally we had a movie that bore almost no relationship to what Swami had written, but was going to be a good movie because it had an interesting storyline and a backstory and characters. And Swami finally said, now look, if we want to make a movie, it had changed now to being a movie about Ananda, let's make a movie about Ananda and not about all of these other people, these fictitious characters. And so at some point, it was like a little over a year ago, I sent the script back to Swami and I said, Swami, I think we're really off track. I think we're out of tune. Could you do something with this? And he read it over and he wrote me an email. Often he has these one-sentence emails that he writes you. You write him 2 pages and he answers you in 1 page. And he said, do you really want this movie to be banal? ? And I wrote back and I said, no, sir, absolutely not. Please, could you? And so he took it and he rewrote it. At that point, I understood that all of us, we needed to just, get in tune with the vision, with the purpose of that film. And what is the purpose? It's to fulfill Yogananda's vision, that this ideal of world brotherhood, communities based on simple living and high ideals will spread like wildfire to cover this earth with little colonies of light. And once that was understood, once I understood that, I stopped feeling lousy about what I was doing. And I began to feel that there was a power that wanted this film to be made. And that my job was only to get in the flow of that power. Because somewhere the movie was already done. Every person was selected. That power knew who the actress was, who the director needed to be, how it was going to be done, how it was going to be filmed, what the music was going to be. It was already there. It exists. And getting in tune with that. And I must say, it's been the most thrilling experience of my life to date. I could leave this world right now, happy. Because by the grace of God and by Swami's, loving, support and patience, I don't mind your difficulties, I expect them. Just to have the opportunity to feel that flow and watch it happen. We took Babaji as the patron saint of the film. And we would just always attune with Swami's vision, Master's vision, and ask Babaji what was the next step. And the messages would come. When we asked, the messages would come. It's like one day I'd get up from a meditation and say, it's time to find the actress. How? And then I'd go out and start talking to people, and then in another meditation, find a casting agent. Oh, okay. I tried not doing that. I tried calling people, do you know an actress? I thought, find a casting agent. Okay? The casting agent got the script on day one. On day one, he made a phone call to an actress who he hadn't seen for 2 or 3 years, but seemed to remember that maybe she was a Buddhist. Sent her the script by email. On day 2, I was talking to her. I met her at a cafe, and she spent a half an hour convincing me that she was the right person to play this part. I mean, I had been troubling about how I was going to convince a Hollywood actress to be in this film. And, wasn't that, can you imagine how I felt listening to her say, now listen, I really am the right person, because I was ready to convince her. And then you could just see that, the flow, the power, just receiving it, not fighting it, flowing with it. So the humility to say, as St. Francis did, as we all need to do, I don't know how to do this, but it's there. And if it's God's will, there's the pathway. The flow is there, and just getting into that flow. We need to do our practices, our 25%, because only then are we still enough to hear that voice, to feel that guidance. So don't be afraid to pick up your instrument. Instruments can look very beautiful. Some of them are extremely beautiful. The harp, to the musician, his instrument is the most beautiful thing. But sitting there, it doesn't play itself until we pick it up and we attune it to the divine will. Always remember, what is God's will for you? It's no big mystery. We're often confused, oh God, I don't know what God wants. Of course we know what God wants. He wants each one of us to come home. He's pulling us. He's drawing us. He's calling us. He's talking to us. He's guiding us. And we need to get in tune, in the flow, in the zone, every day, getting calm and asking God the prayer of St. Francis, Lord, what do you want me to do? And the answers will come. God bless you.